Welcome to the Healing While Discovering Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Michelle. I'm an intuitive transformational coach, certified life coach, certified NLP practitioner, and speaker. I've spent the last 22 plus years helping myself and my clients learn how to create their own happiness and live more abundant lives. In this time, I've also overcome and healed from child sexual molestation, a compulsive eating disorder, hunger, and homelessness. Now it's your turn to move forward with your life and heal from childhood traumas or past experiences. In this podcast, I'll share how I was able to overcome all of my past struggles, as well as my personal stories of overcoming jealousy, loneliness, resentment, and bitterness, and how I learned to forgive. I'll also help you explore your shadow self, deal with having low or no self-esteem, and address feelings of not being worthy or loved. Using my personal experiences and extensive training, as well as stories of grief, loss, depression, and anxiety from my guests, I'll help you change your life and finally heal. You know, Rene, I have myself read that, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me whether this is true or not based on your experience, but I've read that a lot of people trade addiction for addiction. And so what I mean by that is if let's say at one point you were a drug addict, so you stop using drugs and you no longer use drugs, but then they become like a gambleaholic, right? Addicted to gambling or addicted to food or addicted to sex or addicted to porn. Has that been your experience?
Like I said,
I mean, not personally, but have you seen?
Personally though, too,
I was just going to say
my use of drugs and alcohol was a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, all this stuff that maybe it sounds like I'm crying about now, I'm so grateful for, because It led me to people like Gabor Mate. It led me to people, that said trauma is the underlying thing.
Yes.
And the 12 steps, even if they do work for you, never address trauma or emotions.
Ooh.
And so even if it does work for you, right, I honor your experience. The problem is, I had a guru as a sponsor, and I would go to this man with years sober and say, what do I do to treat, this hypervigilance? What do I do to, and they would tell me, something to go write inventory and pray and meditate or do yoga. Not that they would, those are the things that I all ended up doing. And they all worked until they didn't. Just like everything, the methadone clinic worked till it didn't. Going to pill mills worked till it didn't. I think everything works till it doesn't. And then you go for help and you think you're going to get help. And help is not what I got. I was told I was powerless. And it didn't make sense to me. And then I got sober. And then, the truth is, my first experience was, I moved to Florida to get sober, and I went to some meetings, and they told me my kind wasn't welcome.
Ooh.
I went to AA, and they told me my kind wasn't welcome, because at the time I was an opiate abuser, and that was not something that was on the radar.
Wow.
So once again, I should have known from the beginning something was wrong.
So a treatment center told you.
Well, this was an AA meeting.
Okay.
This was an AA meeting.
And they told you weren't welcome.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So I'm glad you're saying this, just so people understand that. Again, I have to reiterate this because I don't want people coming at me or Rene crazy. This is his experience, and he's sharing from his experience. He just said he went to an AA meeting and they told him his kind wasn't welcome because he was addicted to opioids. I don't care whether it was AA, GA. If a person is coming to you for help, you don't tell them that they're not welcome. You say, we're not equipped to handle this type of addiction. So let us connect you with someone who is. That's what they should have said, but they didn't. And as you know, Rainey, right? And as you say, like, we know that everything has led you, to this point now where you're sharing your story publicly. And I just got to say, like, the guru that you went to for help that actually mentored you for a number of years worked closely with someone else who is big in AA, right? Like the person who mentored you has books and all of that stuff.
The whole, so what I mean, the whole thing laid itself out perfectly. Every attempt that I made, whether it was, figuring out the hustle with insurance and buying insurance so that they'll pay for me to go to detox, but then they wouldn't pay for me. I'd go, a treatment center and they'd kick me out after 7 days. Like I've been in treatment centers where people have died and they've kicked me out for standing up for that kid. I see shit that maybe I guess other people don't see. I don't know. Or I call it how I see it. Maybe that's the problem. Because I was the one that got kicked out every time. I got kicked out of a treatment center, no joke, for standing up. It was a Halloween and we were drawing pictures and I stood up and I said, I need help. What the fuck is drawing pictures going to do to help my heroin addiction? I don't want to do this anymore. And the next day I was asked to leave. Ironically enough, it was my time to go. So it's not like I didn't try.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had a guru as a sponsor who had a guru as a sponsor who you can trace it all the way back to Bill Wilson, all the way back. And I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. And I didn't stay sober all those years, and all the people I know I got to know 20 treatment center owners, who knows how many people I know that own sober houses. And I didn't stay consistently sober, I guess. Like I said, I'm good at I was good at self-sabotaging. And what I'm trying to say is I tried it all.
Yeah.
And that's hard to summarize in words.
Yeah.
Like in 22 years, how I literally tried everything they told me to do twice, stood on my head, spun around, and did it.
Yeah.
Until I couldn't anymore. And fortunately for me, I turned to drugs because, like you were saying earlier, I've seen a whole bunch of people get sober and develop a whole bunch of behavior addictions.
Yes.
And I didn't get sober to develop a co-addiction, which at the time I didn't even know what a co-addiction was. I was in my 20s and people are telling me to sleep with prostitutes and I'm just like, huh? And
so it's like, instead of doing drugs, go sleep with a prostitute. That'll make you feel better.
I guess that's their theory. But I was trying to change.
Yes.
At one point I knew it had nothing to do with drugs and alcohol, and that was my solution to life. And that I needed to figure out how to live life. But then you're telling me, not telling me, but leading by example that as long as you stay abstinent, it's basically will co-sign your co-addiction, which usually looks like taking advantage of women. They have a whole step attributed to it. It's called the 13th step. It's like, as a street kid and as somebody that's highly intuitive, I looked, and highly sensitive, as you said, which I didn't even know what that meant. I saw what was going on around me, and I never wanted a part of it. So although I have all this experience with the steps and AA and NA and CA and shoot, I even looked into OA because I blew up. When I do opioids, I was up to 350 pounds, right? Wow. So that's what I'm saying. Like I had 5 years sober and lost 130 pounds and became a yoga teacher. And then I still found myself, choosing to use drugs, whether I wanted to or not. And everybody just told me what a piece of shit I was. But that I had a disease. So do I have a disease of being a piece of shit?
Right.
And like, I'll tell you, for me, when I'm going for help, first of all, for me to ask for help is like a very difficult. I already feel as low.
Yeah.
I'm addicted to a substance that I no longer even want to do.
Yeah.
And now you're spiritually abusing me or emotionally abusing me. And I didn't even know what that was. It was just like, yeah, okay, this is help.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the turning point for you, Rene, where you realized, like, wait a minute, this is all BS? When was that, or what was the turning point for you?
Well, 3 years ago, ironically enough, I'm at my parents' house in North Carolina, and I came up here to detox 3 years ago. Didn't have insurance, but like I said, I had a guru who was a sponsor, who was the spiritual director of a treatment center, who, I knew the kid who was, who owned the treatment center, and they gave me a scholarship. And I didn't kick at my parents' house, and I came to my parents' house and I tried to detox and it didn't work. And I went home and I emailed this friend who said he would help me, and he got me a scholarship to this treatment center. And I went, and, I was done. And I knew the whole thing was, nonsense, but I still believed in the 12 steps, and I believed in this guy. And I had heard about this group of guys that was doing the deal up in Maine, and I was like, all right, like, I'll go. And my wife begged me to go, and I had just signed a plea deal, so I wasn't going to prison, and it was like, that's all I was waiting for, right? Like, okay, now let's get to work here. And I did, and I went to this place, and immediately my intuition just starts telling me something's not right here. And that just let one breadcrumb led to the next breadcrumb, led to the next breadcrumb. And I just followed it. I just followed it, and I ended up in Portland, Maine, and I ran a sober house, and a whole bunch of things were revealed to me, that I had beat myself up for over a decade about these wonderful things that these people were doing. And I was down in South Florida, the con man capital of the world. And I from the beginning, I had been around some really shady people in sobriety, or it was really, I probably met more shady people in sobriety than I did running the street. Fact, 100%, without a doubt, without a doubt. Because there's consequences on the street.
Right.
Or there should be, right?
Right.
But somehow I ended up managing this place, and it was all about, what I could do for the house. It was taking 20 years of my experience, and I always had this thing, because my mom and dad were along for this journey along the way, and it was like, I'm gonna run this place to the best of my ability. And it was just really simple stuff, like, because of all that I had been through, I had learned so much that I can't force you to do anything. And so it was real simple, like, if I drug test you, you got to be clean, and do your simple chore, and no dishes in the sink, or I take away the TV. Like, that's simple.
Right.
And I was sick. I was, we haven't talked about my usage, because I don't like to tell stories.
Yeah.
no, I'm not a storyteller, but
Mm-hmm.
people need to know that I was on, I mean, copious amounts of pharmaceutical drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Broward County, and you could get access to whatever you wanted for a long period of time.
Mm.
And so I paid the price for that. Like, I mean, I didn't sleep for 18 months, and I just held on for dear life
Yeah.
and just did everything to the best of my ability and just observed what was going on around me. And it was all bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
no one cared. It
Mm.
was like I bought into this story of, like, you know, these people doing the deal, you know, as it's laid out in the book, and all this stuff. And I thought the you know, Bruce Alexander and the dislocation theory, it's like the opposite of addiction is connection. And
Yeah.
I went from a super dysfunctional recovery city in Delray Beach, Florida, which it's a recovery ghetto.
Mm.
Everyone knows that. And
Mm.
to Portland, Maine, which was worse
Mm.
because at least in Delray, everybody was everybody. It was what it was. But I went to Portland, Maine, and these people are hiding behind the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And
Mm.
it was a straight South Florida con, but they were
Mm.
hiding behind spiritual principles. And
Mm.
I just walked away from all of it. Like,
Yeah.
I got better by walking away from all of it. I got
Yeah.
better by watching YouTube.
Yeah.
I got better by listening to podcasts. I
Yeah.
got better by going and working at a yoga studio. Like, I
Yeah.
had accumulated all these experiences, which we didn't talk about,
Right.
which led to I knew what to do.
Yes.
And I just did it, and I did me, and it was
Mm-hmm.
nothing like this one size fits all approach that they tried to place on me.
Yes.
And that then led to me discovering that it was all a con.
Yeah. Yeah.
and like, you know, people getting caught selling fentanyl that are directors of these, like,
Yeah.
um and the truth is, this man misled me for 15 years. And that's the beauty of this whole thing is
Right.
this man was a complete con, but it led to me finally having to address my trauma, finally having to address my emotions, finally listening to my intuition and going,
Yes.
something ain't right here. Just like I said, something wasn't right here.
Yes.
When I went to my first detox, and
Yes.
they said jails, institutions, and death, and they told me I was powerless, and I was like, not me.
Right.
And it all came together.
Yes. Yeah.
It all just one thing led to another, and it was difficult. And you know, I say difficult because it reminds me, yeah, it is a cult. Because
Yeah.
if you start asking questions, and I was always asking questions about whatever it was,
Yeah.
I was shamed, or I was told there was something wrong with me, and
Yeah.
there was nothing wrong with me.
Mm-mm.
I just actually wanted to change. I actually wanted to be a man of integrity. I
Yeah.
actually wanted to be sober.
Yeah.
Be a good person.
Yeah.
Find out why the heck was I doing this to myself?
Yes. Yes. That's the question, because a lot of people, and not just like drug addicts, but like alcoholics, even people, you know, food addicts, like for the majority, and you will probably know this number better than me, Rene, but based on like what I have learned and read about, and even my own experience with like a compulsive eating disorder, is that really the reason why we engage, or people engage in those type of behaviors, is really to numb themselves from like actually feeling something. You know what I mean? Which is why I think it's just so like apropos that when we started out this interview, like you were crying because now you're in touch with how you feel and you're no longer trying to numb that sensitivity away because as you kind of said earlier in an interview, like, you know, I don't think you said that you were Irish, right? But you I know you shared with me.
I am though. Yeah.
Right. But you're Irish. And like you said, toughen up, boy. You know, basically ain't nobody got time for you crying or feeling what you feel. But you are a sensitive person. That is your nature. And because you grew up with this whole toughen up, it's like, well, who am I supposed to be then? Right. And so I think it's so important that you pointed out that you asked yourself, like, why am I doing this to myself?
That that's where, you know, Gabor Mate comes in and that's where he, you know, it was like, whatever addiction it is, addiction is addiction is addiction. Yep. And so Bruce Alexander wasn't right for me, that the opposite of addiction is connection, because this community, there was the connection I saw was not kosher for who I am.
The reason why you were doing it is because, well, I guess I can't say, you can either confirm or be like, no, that wasn't it for me. But I guess I'll speak to like when I had a compulsive eating disorder, like I got to a point, I'm like, well, like you, it's like, why am I doing this? Because, you know, Rene, I was like hiding food. Like I would literally on my way home from like somewhere, I would stop at Walgreens, buy like 3 Snickers for $2 because they would be having a sale. I would eat like 1, maybe 2, and then hide the 3rd one. Or I would hide the wrappers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I'm like, then it got to the point I was like, oh my gosh, like, why am I doing this? Right. And I had to stop and take inventory and like realize like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like what triggers me to like do stuff like that? And I realized that, wait a minute, okay, it's because I'm feeling insecure about something. Because most of the time when I would like stop or eat like that, you know, maybe I was just in a meeting with a bunch of, you know, because as a corporate controller, most of my meetings were with men. All of them were with white men. And so maybe I had a meeting and maybe I felt a little insecure. And so that triggered something in me, you know, blah, 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 blah. So I had to realize that, wait a minute, there is a trigger. Something in me happens that causes me to do that. So then I had to get to the root cause again, which was my own insecurity, my own inferiority. And once I dealt with that, my own inferiority, my own insecurities, then the compulsiveness to like eat became less and less. And now I no longer struggle with compulsive eating because I'm so in tune with myself that if I'm feeling some kind of way, I'll sit still, I'll meditate, I'll do yoga. Or even for me, what works best for me is I will sit with the feelings that I have. So if I feel anger, I will sit still with the anger and just allow myself to be angry. If I'm feeling sad, I'll allow myself to feel sad and not try to use food to mitigate those emotions and that feelings. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. It was all, that was what was missing from me with all this help and healing that I was trying to do. And like, I did the steps and I wrote it and I did, I mean, everything they told me to do. And it was like, my thing was I would get years sober, rebuild my life, and then sabotage. So it was like, okay, what is going on here?
Yeah.
This isn't in my system. Like,
right.
Things, I've completely transformed my life. Things are better than they've ever been. And somehow I would cut my legs out from under me. Yeah. And there's no better way for me than to do it with opioids. And then you catch a habit and then it's this whole thing and this whole, and shame played a huge part. And it was all emotional.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I was taught to be tough and you don't cry. And
Yeah.
I mean, I watched my father. I never saw my father cry.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a kid just trying to stuff my feelings, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But yet I was bigger and stronger than everybody. So I could really beat anyone up I wanted to, but I didn't want to because I was so sensitive and such a nice guy. And it was all emotional.
Yeah.
But when you can't cry, you can't, I mean, I started this off crying and I said I couldn't cry. And the time before that was, I was being sentenced to a mandatory minimum prison sentence, and I had to read an apology letter for a crime I didn't commit. And I cried, boy, and I'm going to prison and I'm crying and there's other dudes in there and and it was so freeing though.
Yes.
And now I probably cry every day.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's tears of pain and sometimes it's tears of joy and sometimes it's both, but it's this emotional freedom that I've experienced through woo-woo stuff.
Yes.
Through not tough guy stuff.
Yeah.
There's no tough guy stuff that got me better.
Yeah.
The not feeling your feelings don't matter, and no, man, your feelings matter, and no, man, your intuition's telling you something and you better listen to that.
Yes.
Because those were the things that these people told me I couldn't trust. That how did you know I was lying? My lips were moving. I couldn't trust myself. That intuition doesn't exist. They literally laugh in your face if you're like, my intuition tells me I shouldn't go to this sober house. Yeah, and they have the whole family on board though. So it's you just, and you got to get in where you fit in is what it becomes. And then you start whistling Dixie and you're like, my life is wonderful and I'm happy, joyous, and free. And then you start whispering saying, hey man, I need help. I'm having suicidal thoughts, or I'm cheating on my wife and I don't want to, or yo dog, this gambling's getting out of control. And no one knows what to do other than to co-sign each other's shit. And I know that people are turning to drugs and alcohol to deal with these underlying addictions. And I know people are dying, but it's shh, don't talk about it. I mean, and all I had to do was cry.
Yeah.
It's how the whole thing started.
Yeah.
I quit the sober house because I had an emotional breakdown because intuitively I knew something was going on because something was going on.
Right.
And it led to Emily, and it led to you, and it led to this, and it led to family pictures this morning, and the fact that I want to get my picture taken.
Yeah. It's huge. Yes.
And maybe I'm not 215 pounds where I want to be yet.
Yeah.
But I was 350 and now I'm 265.
Yeah.
And I did that.
Yes, you did.
and that's just it, is my experience before was I had to give credit to other people and it was never me. I believe in God. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Right.
But I got to get off my butt.
Yes.
And take care of business. And I needed to figure out what trauma was for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, like you said, I didn't think I had any. And it turns out that I recreated my childhood with my mentor. My grandmother was a malignant covert narcissist. And so was my mentor.
Yeah.
But I had to find out that life lesson for myself. I didn't even know what a narcissist was 2.5 years ago.
Right.
I didn't know what an empath was 2.5 years ago.
Right. Right. Right.
And if there was some sort of, I would say, underlying reason as to why I turned to drugs and alcohol, it would be that I'm really sensitive.
Yeah.
and nobody taught me how to deal with that.
Yes. Yeah.
And now finally at 43, like I deal with my feelings and emotions and boundaries and communication and meditation and yoga and energy work and crystals and
coaching
and coaching and but I had to get to the point of
mm-hmm.
complete utter desperation so many times to be like, okay, maybe carrying this crystal in my pocket will help me.
Yeah.
I mean, I had crack in my pocket before, so
wow.
What's the big deal to carry a rock that may help me, may not, but I certainly know that if I believe in it, it's going to work.
Yes. Yes. I love it. So, Rene, if there was one thing you wanted people to walk away from this interview with, right? Because you shared a lot. And again, we haven't even shared, I think you've only shared like probably maybe 5-7% of like your experience, which I think is great. So what is one thing you want people to walk away from this podcast episode with?
You're not powerless. And I don't want to say a negative thing.
Right.
So I did a breath work session and, you know, this was a while ago, but it came to me that I am the power.
Yes.
And that led to all these beliefs that I now have that I'm the only one that can change this. Even if my brain did change because of my drug use, I'm the only one who can change that. Yes. I'm the only one that can change what I consume on a daily basis. I'm the only one that can change my thoughts. I'm the only one that can be disciplined every day. I'm the only one that can meditate every day. I'm the only one that can take the leap of faith to hire a coach when I didn't have the money, but I did it anyway. And it's worked out miraculously.
Yes.
You know, it's amazing. And to have somebody hold space for me and just let me be me. And ironically enough, that's what happened at the sober house is no one gave a shit. So I was able to do me and be me. And it worked. Yeah. So I would want people to know that you're in control. Yeah. You got yourself, or I'll say, I got myself into this mess. I am the only one who can get myself out of this mess.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Rene, thank you so much for trusting me enough to come on here, first of all, to work with me, right? But to share your story with the world, right? Because this is going on the interweb streets, right? Internet streets. And to share your story with the world. So thank you for trusting me. And thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you for being yourself, like the way that you were today. Like this is how we talk with each other, and this is how we communicate. So thank you so much. And I love that your parting words are, you are not powerless, because the truth is none of us are powerless. We are the creators of our own realities. And so everything that happens in our realities, the root of that is somewhere in us. And because we co-create with one another, you know, there are some things that will happen that we just really don't have any control over. But what we can control is our response to, you know, what happens to us. And so thank you so much for that, Rene. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey loves, are you looking for a safe place to hang out while you're healing with other like-minded individuals? If so, then I would love for you to join my private Facebook community called Healing While Discovering Yourself, named after the podcast. This community is for those who are truly seeking a safe place to heal and also show up authentically. If this interests you, then I'm going to invite you to go to Facebook/groups/healing while discovering. I look forward to seeing you in the group. Tony Robbins said, "The quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of the questions you're asking yourself." And that's why I'm inviting you to download my free guide called 5 Powerful Questions to Ask Yourself to help you take back control of your life. In this guide, you will learn how to shift your mood, break negative thought patterns, and identify beliefs and stories so that you can explore the truthfulness of these stories. Go to andreamichelle.com/powerful to download this free guide today.